And hello. Welcome back to the Gay Racing Podcast. Zack and Alex are back with you as always. And today is a very, very cool episode for us because we have a special Pride Month guest on the show today. And it's someone that we've been wanting, Alex, to get on for a long time.
Yes.
J.R. Houston, engineer for 2311 Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series, is with us today. JR, we are so happy that you are on today. We're so happy that you wanted to come on. How's it going?
It's going great. Glad to be here. Glad to get the invite. You know, I see y'all stuff on Twitter and see your podcast popping up everywhere. See y'all responding to tweets and all that. So glad to be here.
Hell yeah. We're glad to have you. And if you would like, just introduce yourself to our audience. If they don't know who you are somehow, like, who are you? Who is J.R. Houston?
Yeah, so J.R. Houston, I work for 2311 Racing. I'm a strategy and systems engineer. I primarily focus on strategy stuff for both cars during the week. And then on the race weekends, I'm a race engineer for Bubba Wallace. My husband and I have been married for a year and 6 months now. And he also works in the sport at Tricon Garage, Ryan Hines. So we're just out here living our little lives.
Yeah. And JR, you're one of the first like major NASCAR figures that like I found that was LGBTQ like a few years ago. And when I found like your Twitter profile and I saw the pride flag, I think I remember texting Alex, like this might've been like 2020 or something. I'm like, Alex, oh my God, like there's someone that's gay that works in NASCAR. And it was like, at that time, it was such a big deal. Of course, now, you know, we see more people, which is, you know, kind of the whole reason we created this podcast. We wanted more queer voices in the sport. So it's just kind of a cool moment to finally have you on because I feel like you were one of the first people that kind of awoke that in us. I don't know. Yeah,
I appreciate you saying major. I'm just a lowly engineer.
Right.
Obviously, being on social media and stuff can bring other opinions, but I appreciate that. Definitely, it's been interesting. Obviously, meeting Ryan and growing as a little bit of a figure is interesting.
Right.
I'm an engineer. I'm not a celebrity, right? Like I'm a nerd at heart. So
that's how I feel. I'm just a podcaster.
There's like random people, you know, that are, oh, thank you so much for what you do. Just kind of walking around the garage and stuff. I'm like, shit, that's right. People know me from other places. You know, I got to remember that sometimes. So glad I made that little bit of an impact to y'all as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we want to start out here with how you kind of got to the Cup Series at 2311, because you started out, at least within NASCAR, at some truck teams, and you eventually made the jump to Cup with Levine Family Racing. And now, of course, you're at 2311. And what I kind of wanted to talk about was the NASCAR ladder. We see it a lot with the drivers. They go from truck, Xfinity to Cup. But then what is that like as an engineer? And do you wish the media kind of covered that kind of story more with engineers and crew chiefs, everything like that? It's
pretty interesting. I would say that since I've done it, the landscape has changed a lot. When I first started, I moved to North Carolina, to Charlotte, from Florida, to go to college at UNC Charlotte. Went there for mechanical engineering, knew I wanted to be a race engineer, crew chief, one day type deal. And so I went up there, went to school, and then my junior year, I met Joey Cohen. He's now the competition director at Legacy. Met him just in passing at Darlington Raceway one time, and he was like, hey, you know, get in contact, kept his contact information. He said later that year, he's like, hey, I'm starting an Xfinity team at GMS. We're going to run part-time. And so I went over there, started doing that. I was still in school my junior year. That quickly evolved into basically full-time truck racing with the 24 truck at the time. My first truck race was with Kyle Larson at Martinsville with the McDonald's truck, which is a funny, like, really? Looking forward to where I work now. I'm sponsored by McDonald's, right?
Yeah, that's funny.
So that's kind of funny. But Larson was my first race, and so that was like being thrown to the wolves almost. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Just, I guess I'll go fake it. And then I faked it till I made it. No, not really, but stayed in the truck series there. The next year, we went Xfinity racing full time with Spencer. And then from that year, the rosters kind of changed, and there wasn't really a position for me at GMS that I wanted. So I decided to leave, and I went to DGR, David Gilliland Racing. They were starting a new truck team. Pretty much hired me on the spot when I dropped off a resume, because very rarely is somebody like fresh out of college with 2 years of experience. It's like the joke online with LinkedIn, right? It's like entry level position, 5 years of experience needed.
Yep.
So went there, had that deal for a little while, and in June I had dropped off so many resumes in January that one of them called me back in June, July, and it was John Leonard at LFR at the time at Levine's. And he was like, hey, we're looking for a race engineer if you are looking for something. And at the time I was like, nah, like I'm happy. I'm doing truck racing. The schedule's nice.
Yeah, true.
Then like the next day I called back and I was like, sure, let's chat. And basically it was because I was at DGR, I was truck racing, I was ARCA racing. We were doing basically something every weekend. And I was like, I don't know if I want to go cup racing and work 38 weekends of the year. And then I looked at my last 5 weeks and I was like, that's just what I'm doing now, except I can do cup racing.
Yeah, exactly. You get paid.
Yeah, so I went cup racing there. And then the next year we got Matt D and the Toyota partnership. My first race, I had to go over the wall because I was the only person that fit in the fire suit. So I had to pull tear offs. They're like, have you ever been over the wall before? And I was like, at Eldora, like in a truck race, that doesn't count. It's not live pit stops. So here I am pulling a tear off for Casey Kane, like, and I'm not tall, so pulling a tear off is like,
I didn't
like
think about
jump
that.
over the car.
Oh no!
So that was.
I wish I could see a video of that.
Yeah, I know it's got to be somewhere. But that was my first cup race, and then the next cup race was unfortunately Casey's last race at Darlington. So that was a really cool car, really cool, like leading into it, and then it ends up being his last race, which was disappointing. But that kind of, that year ended. We went to Toyota in 2019 with Matt D, and it just kind of went over until we just, COVID happened. LFR is going to shut down. Mike Wheeler walks into our office and we're talking about what's next because we already know that we're shutting down. There's rumors about, Denny might buy something, start a team. And Mike Wheels walked into the office and he's like, just had a good lunch with Denny. Can't really talk about it. And then he walked over to the whiteboard. He just wrote 23. And we're all like, we're like, shit. Yeah. So eventually turned into, we're starting 2311. And one of the first, 17 or so employees that came from LFR went straight to 2311.
That's good.
A lot of the equipment, a lot of the people basically went over there to start it in 2021. And then kind of the rest is history. We're still there. Obviously, we're in a nice new building with airspeed now, but humble beginnings for sure for the team. A lot of us starting at LFR.
Were you anxious about the transition from LFR to 2311 at all? Like, was there a period where you were just like, you were unsure about what would happen with your career?
For sure. I think that I think everybody was in shock. We knew that LFR was getting sold. We were like, okay, somebody's going to buy it and just run it as is. And in that same meeting, it was like, the potential buyers are not going to be, they're not going to be staying with Toyota. And I think everybody's heart sank because we knew that meant like everything that we had currently was going to need to be basically gotten rid of or whatever. Performance was going to change. So it was like, what now? So I didn't actively pursue anything else because I kind of had in my back pocket, I had Wheels talking about this other team that was going to form, but Wheels was kind of like, hey, if other people contact you or if people recommend you to things, go do the interview. I interviewed with a few other teams just to kind of be like, hey, if this thing falls through, still have something. But it was definitely, I don't want to call it like nerve wracking in those moments, but it was a bit of like, man, I hope this team starts because working for Denny and Michael Jordan and with all the people that we currently work with, right? When you work with a small team, it's very much a family. So it's like you don't want to leave the people that you're working with to go kind of like introduce yourself to a new family. So when it was like, we're going to bring a lot of the people over. It's like, well, that's by far leaps and bounds the best option we have. So I hope it works. So that was good.
And it seems to be working so far. And you mentioned Denny Hamlin, Michael Jordan, and I couldn't imagine that sort of pairing. And imagine telling yourself that 10 years ago. Like, what do you think your reaction would have been if you told yourself, hey, I'm going to work for Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin someday?
I have no idea. My brother jokes with me all the time. He's like, I didn't grow up playing sports. I grew up go-kart racing and like just doing my own thing. I was in racing stuff. I was in stick and ball sports. I ran a little bit of track and field, but nothing special. But my brother was always playing basketball, like when we were growing up. Like he played basketball in high school and then would go play for like leagues around town and stuff like that. So we joke now, like, of course you're the one who ends up working for Michael Jordan, like somebody that he idolized. I'm the guy who works for him. And I mean,
that's so unfair.
I don't like, I know that he's famous and all that stuff, but like, he's not like one of my idols, you know? Like,
right.
I think that a lot of people will be like, oh my God, I want to go work for 23XI. Michael Jordan's one of my idols. Really? Like, come on. Like, he was last won a championship in like the late 90s, right? So
like, how old are you?
You're the
like,
same age as
50?
me.
Like,
yeah, we're the same age. I know how you feel about it. So, but definitely seeing like the aura of that happening with MJ and with Denny around is like, okay, this is kind of a big deal, I guess. You know, it's hard to get starstruck. In our sport, because you're kind of always around a little bit of a celebrity type person, whether it's the driver or, and our case is very specific with MJ, but it's like you kind of grow numb to being starstruck. So that's kind of nice, at least, you know. You can talk to celebrities instead of like, what do I do around this person? J Balvin's just walking around Bristol and I'm like, I listen to your music.
That's cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, JR, I apologize in advance because we have this running like gag or like phrase that we always say on the show. And it's honestly awful. Like when we were talking about the Bristol race and how the tires were being weird, me and Alex are sitting here trying to explain why the tires are being weird. And we just give up and like, you know what? We know nothing about cars. We're gay. We can't do this. But really, it's a stereotype, right? Really, there's so obviously you work in racing. We had a tire specialist literally last year on an ARCA team on a queer tire specialist, and it kind of I just wanted to mention that to you because it's a stupid but very funny joke. Anytime we don't know anything, like we're talking the other week, Alex, we're talking about like the trans axle, and I'm like, I don't even know what that means. She's trans, cool.
Yeah, good for her.
Good for her.
You go, Axel.
Trans pride, yeah.
Yes.
But we wanted to ask you though, like so you mentioned that you were go-kart racing when you were younger. So how long, like, or how early in your life did you get into racing? Like, did you know that you wanted to actually do racing as a career? Was that to be a driver? When did it get into like more engineering instead of driving, or, you know, how did that whole process go? Yeah.
So I grew up, I was born in Miami. My dad was always like race car watching. He was big into drag racing. So we were always watching NASCAR and stuff. So I just, at like 5 years old, I could name every NASCAR driver.
Right.
So I was just seeing it and all that stuff. And in Miami, it's Miami. It's a big city. So there isn't like a ton of racing, you could say, or ability to go outside, you might say too. Different environment. Well, we moved up towards the Tampa area, and there was a racetrack right near where we lived at DeSoto Speedway. It's called the Freedom Factory now. So that was right down the street. So we'd go over there and watch late models, you know, watch just racing in general, go out there on New Year's and watch figure eight buses, like just all kinds of random stuff. And one of our friends was like, hey, you know, we talked about wanting to get into karting because I'd seen during one of the races, they had like a little exhibition of like karting on the track. So I was like, oh, I kind of want to do that. And I was like 9, 10 or so there, and got into it, started. A family friend of ours sold us a go-kart, and we started racing kind of locally, East Bay Raceway, Auburndale, kind of the local small tracks. And then sort of my senior year of high school, we were traveling all over the Southeast, traveling South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Tennessee, kind of doing the national circuit, dirt go-kart racing. So it was definitely non-conventional. Like I said, all of my friends are like, oh, let's go, do something over the weekend, or go watch a high school football game or something like that. And I'm like, I'm actually going to be in Georgia, driving a cart in a circle. Yeah. Funny. So I guess I got pretty used to early on kind of like losing my weekends in a way, because my weekends were just racing. That's what we did. We'd race, even when it was local, we would race Friday night at one track and Saturday night at another track. So it's just kind of the life we lived. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
And how long were you go-karting and racing?
I started when I was 11, and I stopped. I don't remember how old I was, probably 19. After my freshman year of college. Once I moved to North Carolina, there were a lot of racetracks around here. So my freshman year of college, I was in school, and my dad would set up the go-kart and do everything back in Florida. And then he would drive up, and I would either meet him at the racetrack, or he would pick me up at the racetrack on the way to wherever it was. And it kind of grew into, you're trying to be a full-time student and doing all this stuff on the weekends. It got pretty tough, especially not being back home to help build the carts and set up the carts and do stuff like that. Right. Something as simple as cleaning that I could do after school when I was in high school just got pretty difficult. So we decided to hang it up after my freshman year. And my sophomore year, I worked at GoPro Motorplex. So I worked on go-karts my sophomore year of college, and my junior year, I was in NASCAR. So I really never had a off period. So yeah,
that's so cool. You were just always going. That's awesome.
I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, racing is such a huge part of your DNA almost. And a lot of times, a lot of people see you, since you're such a celebrity on Twitter, right? A lot of times you're seen kind of leading the discussion every time this topic of like, NASCAR teams and NASCAR people, they get the winners off. Their job is so easy. I would love to get 2 months off. Right. And so you're someone who I always see kind of leading that discussion. And you've mentioned I like how you said you are already used to like kind of losing your weekends. However, like frustrating is it that people don't kind of get that you really don't get the winners off? Like what's kind of leading your passion for that topic, I guess?
I think the biggest thing is just seeing all the people that I'm involved with, that I work with. Everybody's working their ass off every week. And I think there's this like idea that we just work weekends. Like what you see on TV is all we do. Right. And it's like you work all week and then you go somewhere on the weekend. Like it doesn't just build itself. I think I'm incredibly lucky. And I say it all the time that Ryan also is in racing, because he also gets it. A lot of times we might be at the same track. It's kind of funny. We actually see each other quite rarely, even when we're at the racetrack at the same time, just because we're both doing our own thing. And I think that's kind of like a little snapshot of, even when I'm at the racetrack, just because you're at somewhere doesn't mean you have time to do other things all the time.
You're working.
But also having a partner that's like, understanding of the either you're going to be gone or we're both gone situation is huge. But a lot of other families are not that way. They're husbands out on the road every weekend, and they cherish those Thursdays that they get, with their family or something like that. So the idea that's like, oh, well, you're only working 38 weeks a year only on weekends. It's like, no, all I do on the off season is get my weekends back. Like, and even then, and I joke all the time about it, like, even when I get my weekends back, all I do is spend money because I don't know what to do on a weekend. I'm usually just working. But those off seasons, are huge. Ryan and I are big, like, let's try and take a vacation every year, try and do something. And the discussion is often centered around like off weeks during the year, right? This year we have the 2 off weeks back to back, and next year we're going back to 1 off weekend. And it's like, man, that's a lot of weeks. I see truck series guys even just, they have 5 weeks in a row, and 5 weeks in a row for a truck team is difficult. And it's like, well, we're going to run whatever it is, 26 races straight at the end of next season. That's a lot. This past weekend, Iowa was a Sunday night race for some reason. Not for some reason. It was obviously for TV, but got home at 4:30 in the morning and then went to work at 10 o'clock on Monday. So
my gosh.
Yeah, it's not.
People don't think about that.
Yeah,
like, people don't think about that.
It's not glamorous, and at times, sometimes it's pretty brutal, but the passion is what keeps you there.
Mm-hmm.
And something that we always talk about that you see on our discourse on Twitter too, and Bozy is another big talks about it a lot. Proponent of it is like, the pay. It's like, okay, it'd be one thing as a sport, it was like, yeah, we're working our asses off and the pay for the whole industry is high, but it's like, okay, well, you just added more work. We're not really, as a whole, the industry as a whole isn't getting paid some astronomical amount to do it.
Right.
We talk about you could take a 9-to-5 job and make what we make and have way less stress.
Right.
So when they're all like, oh, well, we have to work Monday through Friday for 12 hours a day. It's like, yeah, I'm not saying your job is easy and our job is hard. I'm saying all of us deserve better. So
exactly.
Yeah, everyone deserves a work-life balance. It's something that I feel very passionate about with my job, and like seeing like my family members, they don't have a good work-life balance. It's sad, but that's a whole discussion for another day. I'm sure a lot of people appreciate like what you and Bozy like kind of bring up to the discussion every time that comes up. Like every time the schedule is released, it seems every year the schedule's released.
Every time the schedule's released, it's like,
here we go again.
I'm like, here comes that one reply, a reply guy that's going to be like,
and
you don't even.
I'm actually curious. What would your ideal schedule be? Like how many races or how many off weeks?
That is a good question. I think 30 would be a good starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
30 is a nice round number. I would say that's me being greedy, but if I wasn't being greedy, I would say give me the 2 weeks off in the summer like we have this year, because that's awesome.
Right.
I think the hardest thing about when you have 1 week off is like, you don't really have time to do anything. What are you supposed to do? Go to, I don't know, Cancun on Monday and fly back Friday? Like, you don't really have time to do something. I think a lot of racing people are used to taking those winter vacations. Like no matter where you go, it's going to be cold when you go on vacation. So having that 2 weeks off in the summer is kind of a fun, different thing that you can actually realistically, I mean, you could take an international trip in 2 weeks if you wanted to. But I think 30 weeks would be like the perfect number. I always say like, I'd like to race everywhere once, except maybe Daytona could be twice, Daytona, Talladega, because that style of racetrack is so incredibly unique compared to everything else.
Right.
But then race everywhere once.
That's what I said for a long time too.
Like Bristol Spring is nowhere near as cool as Bristol Fall. It's the extreme example, right? So
definitely.
Yeah.
And I have another question that kind of leads into Zach's next question about social media, because you do kind of do a lot of like traveling and everything like that. And if you were given more time to do your traveling and everything, it's just a random question, where would you want to go if you had more time throughout the regular season?
Yeah, I think that I want to go everywhere. And I know that's like the most stupid thing to say, but like my short list right now that's on our list is we want to go to Australia. I've been, Ryan's never been, so I want to go back to Australia. Japan is on my list. And I also want to go to Iceland really bad. So that's like my short list currently.
Wow.
But every time one of my friends or somebody posts something of like, I don't know, some random place that they could go or that they go, whether it's like Thailand or Turkey or Italy or Eastern Europe, I'm like, hey, I want to go to all those places too.
We are two different people. Alex knows this. I barely leave my house. Like
really?
I had to drag him basically to go to Indianapolis for the 500. So
like, oh really? I have to get on a plane? Really?
I love experiencing like just different people, like the way that everybody interacts. It's so fun to me. But
that's so cool.
Yes.
Yeah. And one more thing about social media. I feel like as you know, our podcast has gotten more popular. I've gotten more followers. More people pay attention to what I say. I feel like sometimes I get treated more harshly on social media because like I'm very open with my identity. I'm a gay man. And I like see it sometimes in the NASCAR industry, like with drivers, for example, like when there were women or drivers of color in the truck series. And if they wreck, everyone's criticizing them. Every single person is criticizing them. Whereas if they weren't a minority, you know, less people would say something. That's just like my thought, right?
Yep.
And I'm curious if you've ever gotten that feeling being a open gay man on like NASCAR social media, you know, because sometimes I have the feeling like people are only being this mean to me because they see I'm a gay man. They feel like they can, like, you know, have this power over me and be meaner, criticize me. Is that a feeling you ever get?
Sort of. I think I would probably say early on I felt like it was a bigger deal. Now with more followers and more people seeing things, like, I don't want to say I almost want those people to comment because it just drives engagement. Like, more people see something that might be important. So like, comment all the shit talk that you want on a post. Like, all you're doing is giving me more engagement. And the people that need to see this are the people that are going to see it because you commented on it. So perfect. I think that it's inevitable, right? Like,
yeah.
If you
people
post if you post something, anything gets turned into some sort of slur or some sort of slander, and it's like, you're never going to stop it. I mean, especially with the way Twitter is now, it's
I was just
rampant. So it's like, I'm just going to tweet whatever and you know, tweet within my bounds and things that I can actually back up. You know, I never want to tweet or say things on social that are just like, I don't want to call it like too out there, I never want to be aggressive. One thing that I've always tried to do is like tweet something that's like either informational or like funny. Just the way you say things can change the format of the tweet. Like tweeting something like, you know, hey, blah, 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 you did this terrible thing on the racetrack, screw you. Or like making it a funny joke of just, well, I wouldn't have done that. It's something as simple as that is like, instead of pointing at a person and like stabbing at that person, you can say it without saying it. And I think that's, we always joke, my friend Alanis, who you've probably seen, Alanis King, we joke that Instagram is for hot people and Twitter is for funny people. Like, so
that's why I'm on both.
That's why I'm on Twitter.
But it's funny because like when Threads first came out, right? It was like, there's too many hot people. You're not funny. That's
why I'm not on Threads.
The reason Twitter is good is because it's funny. Like, you go on there because you like want like the little bit of a dopamine of like a funny tweet or maybe a little bit of news or something. But you go to Instagram and it's like, hey, all of you should just only use pictures, no words. Like, minimize your word count.
And like, put a shirt on.
Really killing us. Yes. Sometimes. But it is funny that like sphere is different from social media site to social media site, but trying to be funny and engaging is better than just trying to call out people, you know?
That's why I love Twitter. I still love the live tweet races. Just being so funny. Like if something silly happens and I put like a reaction video of like, this is so-and-so driver doing this and something stupid. And then it gets like 100 likes or something. It's so fun.
It's like the video of the dude driving through a field in like a truck.
Yeah, that
like,
one.
Yep. Oh my gosh. Sometimes I feel like there's such an art behind social media. I'm pretty sure it's harder to like be on social media sometimes and to like drive an actual race car. That's what it feels like.
Honestly. I'm sure that some of the drivers would agree with you. Honestly,
some of them probably would actually.
They hire people to do their social media because they drive the cars.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is funny. One of my favorite things about watching F1 racing or IndyCar racing when it's going on at a different time than our race is the fact that I can live tweet and just like tweet stupid things about it and just like make jokes. And when you're in it, I don't see what it looks like on Sundays. I just see like most of the tweets when I'm scrolling through on the plane or something like that. But during an F1 race, some of the most joy is just like the stupidest stuff.
Yes.
But it's
Love
fun.
it. And now we're going to move on to some of our Patreon subscriber questions. This first one is from Blake. Since you are very open with being gay, how have interactions with others both in the sport and among fans changed since you shared your story?
I think it's been positive with the upfront in-person stuff, right? Like a lot of people that you meet in person, one thing that I learned very early on, like when I came out to my family and then came out to everybody, it was kind of an interesting, okay, everybody, even in your close circle, you're coming out to, right? One thing that it doesn't prepare you for, or like that I wasn't prepared for necessarily, was you're pretty much coming out the rest of your life. Like every time you meet somebody, if you're talking about, oh yeah, when I go back home to my husband, like
it's like a reaction.
Yeah, it's like when you say it, you almost like, how are they going to react to that?
Yeah.
Like you're almost testing them with that information to be like, okay, what type of conversation are we going to have? Or how are you going to react to that? How should I feel about you? But generally, everything's been super positive. I'm sure that, like there are random tweets, and I'm sure that there are random things that people think about me in the background, but I don't really care, because I think that, that one person that comes to 2311 on premiere day and, just comes over and has a chat, and it's like, oh my God, can I take a picture? Since you came out, I feel like I can be in the sport, and I feel like I'm accepted. And that goes so far, right? Like just that little bit is like, okay, I influenced one person. I'll take those, call them virtual daggers, whatever you want to call them, with the people that are going to comment on every, it's a double whammy, because I work for Bubba, and Bubba deals with that stuff all the time. Right. So it's easy picking for them. But that's the outside. The stuff on the inside is incredibly positive. I don't feel at all excluded or any of that from where I'm at. Now, there was a point in time, right? LFR shut down, and I was looking for jobs. I was getting very serious with my relationship with Ryan, and it was like, well, if I come out before I get a job, am I not going to get a job?
God, yeah.
Like if I say in that off season or whatever decided to come out, and then say some big team wants to hire me and they come up with a reason not to, because that's now something that they have to deal with. So that was kind of a bonus of 2311 as a whole, was not only was it my close friends and family that I had worked with at Levine, but it was also working with Bubba and working with kind of this idea of we're going to be different. So it made it a lot easier kind of in that, I don't call it transition phase of closeted to out. It was like, okay, well, 2311 didn't exist before I was out, and it has only existed since I've been out. So everybody that comes to the team, or, they know me as the gay engineer that works for 2311. They might say, of course he works for 2311, but that's fine. That's what 2311 is, So it's really positive.
I teared up a little bit, not gonna lie. I need some damn tissues. I ran out of tissues at my desk. I'm drowning over here. I don't know why that made me cry. I was like, something you said.
But Zach, like you and I have heard the same kind of messages. Like we just do a silly little podcast that says the word gay in the title.
I'm so stupid. Like, why do y'all listen?
But it does make an impact when people see more people like themselves. And we told you earlier, JR, like seeing you several years ago, it's like, oh my gosh, there's more of us. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Like just that kind of community, it does go a long way.
I thought one of the biggest things last year was just like getting these shirts made, like going to Jamie at 2311 and being like, we should do some Pride stuff. And she was like, what do you think? And I just sent her we already had the Forward Together logo, and I just sent it to her with a rainbow. And I was like, just literally this, like, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, just that. And just seeing these shirts show up at 2311, like the premiere day, when people were I'm like, this is awesome. Like, there was a point in time where it was like, it would be frowned upon to be wearing something like this. But 2311 is kind of that safe space where you can go and enjoy it and be a part of it.
It's amazing. And I kind of had a follow up to that question, and you kind of go into it. Like, I'm wearing a NASCAR Pride shirt. You're wearing the Forward Together Pride shirt for 2311.
I didn't get the memo.
Yeah, Zack's wearing just a little polo.
I wanted to look nice.
But how do you feel like NASCAR as a whole is doing in terms of efforts of supporting the LGBTQ plus community? I mean, a few years ago, they didn't even acknowledge Pride Month. Personally, I still think there's a long way to go. I'm just curious, like, as you are into industry, how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I think it was ramping up properly, I could say, like for a period of time there, right? Like it was like, okay, we're gonna do a little bit more, we're gonna do a little bit more, we're gonna do a little bit more. And then it was kind of like, do we want to do anything? We might get lambasted for it. At least that's what it feels like on the outside watching it, right? You know, a little less vocal publicly, but on the inside still trying initiatives and working on initiatives, right? I think it sounds silly, but you know, just the merch, like just having people wearing that stuff goes so far. NASCAR posting on Pride Month goes so far because you're NASCAR. Like, it's the most not gay thing people could think of. Like,
right.
What is the least gay sport? You'd be like, I don't know, NASCAR.
Like,
yeah, exactly. Motorsports as a whole. So I've always felt like, you know, they made a really big step. You know, what was it, 2018, 2019, with the I Am NASCAR stuff. And since then, it grew a bit, but then it's kind of been a little bit more stagnant. They're not really, and I think that, I don't want to say that they're not trying to. I think that they've kind of hit that wall, you know, with everything that happened last year between big brands getting called out for things and the backlash and all of that. That's not NASCAR's fault. All of that set everybody back, right? So NASCAR's having to kind of regrow from that foundation back forward.
And I will say this year, I was surprised they acknowledged it again after what happened last year. And I think it's still very positive that they are still acknowledging it despite what happened last year with all the corporate backlash and everything.
Absolutely.
Like, I definitely think it's a huge positive. And then this next question is from another Patreon subscriber, Tanner. Since you came into the sport, there's been a big change with going from the Gen 6 car to the Gen 7. And 2311 has had to have 2 different iterations of the Toyota Camry, with the latest debuting this year. How has this car altered your job and how you're able to influence the car? And has this been a fun challenge compared to the Gen 6 car? Yeah,
when I started in the Cup stuff, I was doing a lot more of the setup stuff, a lot more building the race car, making the race car go fast. So that was all in a lot of Gen 6 stuff. When 2311 started, I slowly started kind of migrating into the strategy role. So I still work literally next to the people that are building the cars to make them go fast. So I'm still involved with it. So on my specific side, on the strategy stuff, when you look at the Gen 6 car, when you go to, say, Kansas, you go to Kansas on any given weekend, you know everything about Kansas because you've been racing there for 10 years on the same car. And then the Gen 6 car or the Gen 7 car comes in, it's a new tire, new speeds.
Everything.
I mean, everything is just totally different, right? So you don't have any history to look back on. You can kind of guess. So we were doing a lot of guessing in the early stages. And still NASCAR now is trying to figure out, you know, how to make racing better at some of these tracks. So even Phoenix in the spring is different than Phoenix in the fall because they bring a different tire. And on my side, it's like, okay, we tested that tire with like 3 cars on the racetrack. So everything that we learned for my side is kind of tough, how much rubber was on the track and stuff like that. But on the setup side, for sure, 2311 was in a unique position because we started as, you know, we were buying a lot of support from Joe Gibbs Racing. So we would get call it a manufactured car. We would get manufactured parts. We would get kind of all these manufactured parts and pieces from Joe Gibbs Racing. And then we would put it together ourselves, you know, fiddle on it a little bit and then take it to the racetrack. Well, with Gen 7, we've got a manufactured car. It's not coming from Joe Gibbs Racing anymore, but the way we started the team, it kind of turned into basically we were running Gen 7 on a Gen 6 car. So the way processes and procedures of building a car were kind of already in place. Now the bodies and stuff. The bodies are completely composite, right? So we can't do anything to them. There's definitely less creativity in the Gen 7 car than the Gen 6 car. We're still honing in on it, right? Like, I think what's interesting is when NASCAR changes a tire, yes, it sucks because we've never done it before, but it's kind of, the tire is fundamental to how the car drives. So even if we take, like I said, Phoenix 1, we learn a bunch of stuff, we figure out how to optimize it, we go to Phoenix 2, it's nowhere near the same. So we have to kind of like constantly improve. And then with, even from 2022 to 2023, the noses changed. They made the louvers bigger. So there was a aerodynamic shift from 2022 to 2023. And then for obviously the Fords and the Toyotas in 2023 to 2024, you kind of spend the first quarter of the year learning the car again. Where does the balance need to be for the new car? Yes, it makes more downforce or whatnot. How do we optimize it? So the challenge is definitely in that first third to half of the year. And then the second half, you really see, okay, these are the guys that figured it out. And this is what it takes to go fast.
Awesome. And we have one more Patreon question here. This is from Dylan. He wants to know, what is it like to work with both Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace, and how has your relationship with them evolved over time?
It is great. With Bubba, I talk to him more than I talk to Tyler because I'm on the 23 car most of the time.
Right.
I'm coaching Bubba on driving stuff, and this is our 4th year together now. So, just the trust that you have in each other is really unique. Being able to tell him, hey, you're doing this thing wrong, and him actually being like, okay, I'll fix it because when you told me something in the past, it worked. Like, that took a long time to build that. But what's fun is, somebody like Bubba, somebody who's trying to make a difference and somebody who's trying to win races. Cool. Get along there, right? Yeah. And then Tyler comes in, and Tyler's like happy-go-lucky Tyler. He's awesome. We get along super well. Went to a couple tests with him. Bubba got surgery on his shoulder in 2022 to 2023. So Tyler did a lot of the testing during that off season. We went to COTA and tested. So we immediately built a relationship because I was doing the stuff with Tyler that I would be doing with Bubba. And Tyler's very progressive. There's no, he never shied away from it in the past. Right. So being able to work with Tyler and Bubba is pretty badass. I couldn't ask for better drivers when it comes to that front.
That's awesome.
Yep.
And if you would like to ask future guests some questions, you can do so by supporting us at patreon.com/gayracingpod. And Zack, you get the honor of asking our guest question.
Are there our new guest question?
Yes.
Cool. So we ask this to every guest, and today's guest question is marry, kiss, wreck. And your 3 drivers that you get to either marry, kiss, or wreck is Joseph Newgarden, Max Verstappen, and Will Power. A very curated assortment of 3 open-wheel drivers for you to choose from. If you ask me, the answer is pretty obvious, but I'm very curious to see what you pick, JR.
Oof. Damn, that's tough.
Joseph Newgarden, Max Verstappen, Will Power. It's tough. Is it really?
Yeah, because there's 2 that I don't know which one I want to kiss or wreck. I think I would marry Joseph.
Okay.
Because I could live with that all the time.
No one wants to marry Verstappen or Power.
Nobody wants to. Yeah, see, that's
Who wants to live with that? Like, what?
Yeah. I definitely would marry Joseph. I would probably crash Will Power. So I guess I'm gonna have to kiss Max Verstappen.
Why?
But you know what? You get to go home to Joseph. You get to home with Joseph. Though.
Exactly.
It's fine. Yeah. So no matter what, your answer, it works.
Verstappen needs to be humbled. I want to wreck him. He needs to be humbled. He needs it bad.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair.
Again, this is why this is the same stupid energy that we have on Twitter places.
And before we let you go, JR, we also had a request from one of our Patreon subscribers. This is also Tanner. He wanted you to answer our old guest question as well. and it's about cars. And you post a lot about cars. Every time I look at your social media, you're posting some interesting car that I've never heard of. And so the old guest question was, if you could make a lap in any car around any track, which car and track would you choose? And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be a race car.
So curious to your answer.
God, that is
more curious than the last one, actually.
It caught me off guard at that. If I answered like that and didn't think about it much, I would probably say a McLaren P1 around the Nürburgring. But if you gave me more time to think about it, I would probably come up with a different answer, because I would just keep changing it around.
I'm too ADHD for the Nürburgring. I don't know why y'all love that track.
If I could make one, so you're saying a lap, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Someone else said that before. So we need to change the question. If you had an hour at a racetrack,
okay, that's
what we need to say, because people
an hour is like 2 laps. Well, yeah, because you get the most time in the car.
Oh
so
my God, you guys are so.
You could just say day. You get a day in the car at any racetrack.
You get a day.
I'm getting the bank for my
I would probably do a
podcast.
I would probably do a P1 around Spa. I've always really, really liked Spa. It races like crap. The races are super boring, but the track looks super badass.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. I think Spa and Nürburgring are like both the most answered for that question when we did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine what like a Radeon and Eau Rouge would feel like.
Ooh.
Like I can't imagine what that would feel like.
Now, I would absolutely drive literally anything everywhere, right? Like that's kind of my a little bit of my personality is like, if you gave me a Honda Civic around Homestead, I'm gonna have a good time.
So our good friend, that's what Zach's laughing about. Our good friend Taylor Kitchen answered a Kia Soul around Kentucky. And
that's good.
That is still my favorite answer we've ever gotten.
It was Kentucky? I thought it was Texas.
It's Kentucky or Texas, I think.
Kentucky is just diet Texas anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
same thing.
Yeah,
that's why that made me laugh. I'm like, yes, random budget street car on a NASCAR oval. Let's do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think that I would not drive anything anywhere. Like,
oh yeah,
even if it was
opportunity, I take it.
Give me a Hyundai Sonata at Talladega. I don't know. I'll be wide open on the chip. I don't care.
Let's see how fast this thing goes, brothers.
Yeah. Like, can I run the apron? Like, do I have to stay on the track, or can I run the apron? Make it a competition.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, Jared, thank you so much for joining us. We had so much fun. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, I think all my handles are the same. They're all JR Houston 20. So on Twitter, I'm not going to say X. It's on Twitter.
Yeah, it's on Twitter.
Instagram. Yeah. So I'll be on all those socials causing a stir, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'll be
when that
right
schedule comes out.
Oh, yeah. When that schedule drops, you be ready.
It's time for you to lock in when that schedule drops.
Like, I lean forward.
Oh, it was such a pleasure having you on, JR. Hope you guys check them out. Check out 2311 Racing too, of course. I feel like my fandom for that team grew a little bit after this episode. So thank you for everything you do, JR.
Thanks to y'all as well for being out there and being a voice. I think that's a super positive thing too. We can't underestimate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
thank you for saying that.
Set up to do. Yeah, we really appreciate that. Again, if you would like to ask future guests questions on the Gay Racing Podcast, subscribe to our Patreon to help support us. We will see you guys next time. Take care. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.